Welcome back. My name is Teresa and I'm very much alive. If you're new here, welcome. I have an awful, garbage, filthy mouth where sometimes, just sometimes, I tend to use the word fuck as a comma. I know. I am disgusting. And I don't apologize for it. So if you're not into that or weird stuff in general, this is definitely not the place for you. Feel free to exit out the video here. No harm, no foul. But I'll remember our time fondly. Y'all, the Anne inside of me is winning. Now don't get me wrong, I love playing with color, I really do. But sometimes, just sometimes I have this really weird fantasy where in my head, I'm rich. I live out in the Hamptons. Ina Garten is my next door neighbor and we're frenemies. I really want her to like me, but she could smell that I'm new money. You know what I mean? In all seriousness though, ever since I was given the violet palette from Mama Mel Thompson, you know, my good old Judy over here, I had been low-key keeping an eye out for releases from Viseart. They did release a spring palette, which ironically now kind of looked like the Sydney Grace Tiny Marbles palette, and I decided not to buy it because I was like, that looks a little too close. But in any case, when I saw this palette, boys, the Anne inside me gasped with delight, and next thing I know, it's being shipped to my house. So with that said, let me tell you a little bit about, I'm gonna need a computer to help me. Computer?
Étendu palette in Soleil La Plage.
Thank you.
Toss on your sunnies, throw on your hat, and don't forget your flip-flops. Escape with us to La Plage. We are bringing the beach to you in our latest colorful watercolor musings, along with our hand-drawn packaging created by our very own petite design team. All aboard! With Anastasia B. Sparrow at the helm of our sailboat, steering us into the sunset as Le Capitaine de Perdu. Yes, you got that right. We designed it all. C'est la vie. The tides have changed in our world. So come set sail with us to our dreamy Soleil La Plage, a chic collection of soft sandy hues with pops of crystalline finishes inspired by much loved shade from our Koi palette.
So this palette retails for a whopping $44. This palette is compact, and on the outside it has this lovely soft matte finish. Of course, you have this little pull closure here that allows you to open the palette up. So you do get a nice mirror there, which I'm not going to blind you with. And here is your little color story. There are 12 shades in this palette, 5 mattes, 3 duochromes, and 4 metallic shades. This kind of gives me the vibe of a more muted ABH Riviere palette. That being said, because it's $44, let's break it down by shade. The first shade is Citronade, or Citronade. Citronade? Citronade. Computer?
Citronade.
Thank you. This is a very pale lemon yellow matte color. This shade does require to be built up to have a more substantial opacity. There is some kick up, there is some fallout, but overall very easy to clean. The shade not only looked great on the lid, but for me it was the most perfect inner corner highlight. Sometimes I just crave a good inner corner highlight, and I usually can attain that with a white shade, so this is kind of nice that it's like a nice like pale yellow color. It looks so pretty in the inner corner. I also enjoyed using this shade to soften up the dark edges, especially with the last shade in this palette. The shade next to that is Lumiere. This is a metallic pale yellow shade, and probably one of my favorite metallics in the whole palette. It applied incredibly easy with glitter glue. I didn't experience any fallout with this shade, and it blended beautifully with the other metallic shades in this palette. And actually, it's, I don't know what I have on as a highlight too today. It makes for a motherfucking banging highlight. I am a slut for a pale yellow gold highlighter, I really am, and this motherfucker does not disappoint. So we love a versatile palette. No, I really do, like that's fucking great. Anyway, the next shade is Cove, and it's a peachy metallic shade, which I imagine will probably also be another beautiful highlight. On Uncooked Chicken, it's a little bit too dark for me, but someone who obviously is definitely deeper than the shade of Paper, feel free to try it out. But this is very similar to the Lumiere shade. I didn't experience any issues with this shade regarding performance or application. Again, also applied this with glitter glue and didn't experience any fallout. And this shade also blends beautifully with the other metallics to create a really beautiful gradient. Now the last shade in this row is Plage. I think that's how I'm pronouncing it correctly. Plage. Okay, sorry. Now this shade is described as a neutral nectarine matte shade. Now when you look at it in pan, you kind of assume it's going to be pretty light, but I'm happy to say it was actually incredibly pigmented, and on my skin tone, it actually ran a little bit pink. That said, it blends beautifully with the other matte shades in this palette, and there was some light fallout with it, but overall, again, very easy to clean. The second row starts with the shade Palmier. Computer?
Palmier.
Thank you. And this is classified as a soft yellow metallic shade. Again, I applied with glitter glue, had no issues. I think one of the best things about Viseart's metallic shades is how well they work with each other. They just blend so fucking well. You really do not have to do too much blending. It really does the work for you. I love that I'm able to create really beautiful gradients within the metallic shades. Now, the next shade is C, and this is described as a soft blue duochrome. It does kind of have like a hint of a green shift to it, and this shade, not great. I had a huge expectation for this shade, and I was hoping that it would apply very similarly to the purple shade in the violet palette, but boy, I was wrong. I applied this shade several different ways, and I finally think I found a way to use the shade, but again, it's not my favorite. In pan, it looks like it's going to be super pigmented, but once you start kind of applying it to the face, it's very, very sheer and very, very patchy. When applied on the lid with some glitter glue, I got glitter bukkake everywhere, so that wasn't really cool. And again, I was really trying my hardest to build up the shade, and I could not build it up to have the opacity of what it looks like in pan. It's just very, very streaky. I felt like I saw my actual lid more than I did the eyeshadow. So I then tried it with the dry brush to see if that would be a little bit better, and that was somehow worse. I wasn't a fan of it. As a primarily neutral palette that has that signature pop of blue, that pop of blue better be shit your pants amazing. That pop of blue better demand attention at the country club, you know what I mean? But alas, this was another shade that just came way too fucking quickly. And no, we did not cuddle afterwards. Very, very disappointing. But he did share with me his huge collection of Futurama DVDs, so that was cool. But, boys, I found a way for this to work. This makes for a fucking poggers highlight. So while yes, I have been an Anne as of late, I'm still a little slutty when I turn my face. The next shade is Parasol, and this is another duochrome shade in the palette. This was lovely. It was a very beautiful orangey red shade. It looked great on the lid. There was some kick up, some light fallout, but overall very, very easy to clean. And I cannot stress enough how pigmented it was when I compare it to the C shade. It was like night and day. Now the last shade in this row is the last duochrome in this palette, and that's Sungrown. This is another one that performed very similarly, if not the same, as Parasol. It was a beautiful orange duochrome, and it blended really perfectly with Parasol to create this Tahitian sunset moment that I really love to do when there are oranges and reds and yellows in a palette. Moving on to the last row, the first shade is called Ananas. Computer?
Ananas.
Thank you. I really just want to call the shade Bananas so goddamn badly. Anyway, this is a really beautiful mustard yellow matte. Upon initial application, she is very light. She definitely has some kick up and some fallout, but overall, again, fallout, very easy to clean. And this blends beautifully with the Citronade shade. At first, I was kind of concerned, like, oh, maybe there really shouldn't be two yellows, but I kind of feel like they play together so well, and it creates this really beautiful, soft, like lemon moment. Like if you wanted to play with yellow eyeshadow, but you're really scared that it might make you look like you have jaundice, this is probably the best iteration, like a soft yellow. It is very reminiscent to watercolors, which I know that was in the description of the palette, and I kind of feel that really shows through, is that these colors are just so soft and they're really beautiful. Anyway, this shade not only looked good in the crease, but definitely on the lid as well. I will say though, it's not my favorite yellow in the world. I do have some favorites that are like, bam, pigmented upon initial application. This one does require to be built up like I mentioned, but overall, still very, very pretty. The shade after that is Bronzage. I think that's what it's called, Bronzage. Computer?
Bronzage.
All right, we'll take it. This shade is a very pretty nectarine metallic shade. And much like the other metallics in this palette, there's some light kick up, light fallout, very, very light, but overall easy to clean, and applied really, really nicely with glitter glue. I do question though whether you need this shade, and dare I say it's probably a more muted version of Sungrown. So I kind of question, probably didn't need to have this shade because on the eye, they look so fucking similar, but alas, there's another orange option in the palette. The shade next to that is Raffia. Computer?
Raffia.
Thank you. This shade is considered a medium sandy brown. And another shade that requires to be built up to have a much more stronger opacity, but still not the end of the world. But once built up, this shade blends effortlessly with the other shadows in this palette. This is a perfect crease color, and I really loved pairing it with the yellows to create a honey moment that, again, I am a sucker for those kind of tones, and I just, these do not disappoint. Now the last shade in this palette is Driftwood, and this is the warm dark brown of the palette, and also serves as the deepest shade of the palette. Unlike the other mattes, this is incredibly pigmented, and I loved using the shade because I feel like it added a lot of dimension to my looks. Whether it was in the outer corner, the lower lash line, or shit, even in the crease. This shade blends not only beautifully with the other mattes, but with the metallics as well. And it does a really great job of adding depth to any look. I have to say that I really enjoyed this palette. The mattes are incredibly easy to use. Yes, they do require to be built up somewhat, but you won't experience any patchiness or difficulty in blending. These shades really do the work for you. You just have to build them up. And the longevity on these boys are they're so fucking good. I didn't experience any sort of fading, and I was wearing these eyeshadows for upwards to more than 12 hours, and it did not budge at all. Now, suppose I compare this to the Violet palette, which is kind of interesting because I feel like in that palette, I really didn't experience a lot of kick up or fallout. In fact, I think I noted that there really was none. So slightly taken back that these did have some kick up and fallout. But again, to reiterate, it was very easy to clean. I feel like you get a nice variety of mattes in this palette, and I appreciate how they paired with the metallic and the duochrome shades of this palette. What is nice about the matte formula is that it's incredibly easy to blend. The formula does a perfect job of shifting tones and creating depth just by combining the colors. For example, the Driftwood shade really provided a lot of depth and dimension for my looks. And also when combining this color with other colors, it did create new colors. It was really beautiful. I also appreciate that the mattes stand on their own and they don't get overshadowed by the metallic formula. That being said, the metallics in this palette apply beautifully with glitter glue. And again, I had no issues in terms of application and blending them together. I think the metallics are probably some of my favorite metallic formula that I've ever tried, because as much as you combine them and you layer more shadow on, you will never experience any sort of weird texture issues. Or as I lovingly like to say, ball sack texture. You're never going to experience that with the metallics. Because nothing pisses me off more than turning my eyelids into an 80-year-old's nutsack. So I'm very happy that I can't do that with these metallic shades. That being said, I do question that they could have gotten rid of a couple of the shades, because I do find that there is an overlap with some of the duochromes. For example, Sungrown and Bronzage look very similar on the eye. Now, their duochrome formula, it's okay. I think there are better options on the market that have more of an evident shift between the shades, and this one, they kind of fall short for me. Now, this formula is still very pretty and very much in line with their metallic formula regarding how easy it is to use. The biggest disappointment is the C shade. An opportunity was missed for not creating a really beautiful icy blue duochrome. But in that same breath, it makes for a fucking poggers highlight. Okay, so maybe I'm not enchanting people at the country club with my eye look, but I'm about to cut a bitch with my cheekbones at brunch. I'll take it. At the end of the day, I'm sure you have things in your collection that are very similar to this palette. The color story is not, new or remarkable or anything like that. And while this is not shit your pants amazing like the Violet palette, like that palette is, that's fucking great, that palette. It's still really nice. You can trust that the quality is solid and you will get a nice variety of looks. Some that will double as highlighters too. So at the end of the day, I'm very happy to have this in my collection and I don't mind paying full price for it. I feel like it's definitely worth its value. Anyway, let me know down below if you're interested in picking up this palette, or if you're gonna be skipping out on it, or if you're gonna be picking up that Violet palette, which, I mean, seriously, there's just something about that palette that gets my nethers all, I was about to say clammy. And then I realized, that's disgusting. I mean, I guess it ties into the theme of the palette, right? I'm gonna shut the fuck up. All right, anyway, with that said, I wanna say thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. As always, feel free to like, comment, hit that subscribe button, it's free, and hit that bell icon for notification of all my future posts. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, to all my beautiful, wonderful patron bubbies. Thank you so much for keeping this delicious, disgusting, filthy, trashy, gross, really gross garbage boat afloat. I couldn't do without you, and I love your adorable little delicious faces. Just wanna eat them all up. Clams Casino and all. I need to stop saying clams. Anyway, if you want to know what is currently on my face, along with where to get my merch, my podcast, and my bloopity blop blop, everything will be listed in the description box below. And I'll see you little pumpkins later. Bye.